Hello everyone, this is Cobalt. This is the next video in my character analysis series for Brawlhalla. I'll be doing a brief introduction of the character followed by a frame data analysis on their signatures, and if you want to skip all this and get straight into the info, there's a timestamp in the description, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with the release of your favorite legend. In these analyses, I want to focus solely on the character's signatures. Light attack combos are covered much more in depth than I ever could elsewhere and function pseudo-comparably for all characters of that weapon class, so I'm not going to be discussing the general neutral of the character with their weapon, unless it pertains in some way to their signatures. Firstly, I want to give clear descriptions of the terminology I'll be using. Startup frames are the amount of frames that happen after a move has begun until the first hitbox of the move becomes active. Active frames are the duration of frames that the move contains hitboxes that can collide with your opponent. FAF, or First Actionable Frame, is the first frame available where your character is able to move again after the move has been started. For all of this data, I'm using the character's jump to display the first actionable frame. Lastly, on miss refers to the move not making contact with an opponent, and on hit refers to the move making contact with an opponent. I'm going to be doing my analysis today on the next newcomer to Brawlhalla, Thea the Speedster. She was sent on a quest by Zeus after winning just about every event at the first Olympic Games. She was tasked with retrieving the Helm of Hermes from the gods of Asgard. She's notorious for her branding and sports marketing, growing a vast sports empire even in the realm of Valhalla. Thea's weapons are the Battle Boots and Rocket Lance, the second user of the Battle Boots to come to the game, boasting tremendous speed. I think she's going to be a very good legend, and the mobility offered by both Battle Boots and the recovery of Rocket Lance will make her an insane character. Her stat distribution is 4 strength, 6 dexterity, 3 defense, and 9 speed, the first legend of the game to have a speed stat this high. Her speed is definitely going to make her a viable contender in the game in my opinion, but that lower defense could potentially make her hard to be consistent with. The stat spread fits very well for an Olympic runner and leans more into the speedster archetype. This weapon combination I think will probably have solid synergy, and could prove to be decently viable in competitive play. So, will the Speedster be able to run circles around the competition? Well, let's find out. Let's start with her Battle Boots. Battle Boots side sig has 18 frames of startup, active frames from 19 to 25 with an FAF of 45. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Thea takes a sprinter stance and bursts forward with tremendous speed, leaving a trail of hitboxes in her wake. This SIG has some good burst range to it, and while it has average startup, it has really low FAF, making it hard to punish at higher damage ranges. Though at lower damage thresholds, the knockback is pretty low, so you may not get enough hit stun out of it to make it effective. Battle Boots neutral SIG has 15 frames of startup, active frames from 16 to 19, and 27 to 32, with an FAF of 55. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Thea leaps into the air with an upward kick, followed by a quick change in direction and a second kick. It's worth noting this move doesn't hit grounded opponents, but is great for jumping opponents or those recovering high. It's got really fast startup, which is kind of par for the course for neutral SIGs, but it's always good to have. Battle Boots down SIG has 18 frames of startup, active frames from 19 to 26, and 34 to 41 with an FAF of 64. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. On hit, the move adds 2 additional follow-up hits from frames 46 to 51 and 58 to 63 with a new FAF of 84. Thea quickly dashes forward, reverses direction, and then dashes backward, reverses direction a second time, and dashes back to her original starting point. When this move makes contact with an opponent, Thea dashes through her opponent twice more before the finishing blow. It's not a bad SIG and has average frame data, but since you return to your original starting point, it can be punished if it gets red. Next up is her Rocket Lance. Rocket Lance side SIG has 19 frames of startup, active frames from 20 to 30 with an FAF of 51. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. On hit, the move converts into a second hit with active frames from 54 to 58 with a new FAF of 83. Thea lunges forward with her Rocket Lance stretched out in front of her with a flurry of attacks finishing at a slightly upward angle. On hit, the original flurry of attacks executes followed by a large finishing slash. This move has some pretty good disjoint to it, and while it has average startup, the FAF is honestly pretty decent, and I think that it will have a good place on her kit. Rocket Lance neutral SIG has 17 frames of startup, active frames from 18 to 32 and 42 to 44 with an FAF of 66. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Thea throws her Rocket Lance into the air, creating a massive projectile hitbox, and following its trajectory with a second set of hitboxes. This move doesn't hit grounded opponents, but is excellent at catching jumping opponents or those recovering high. It also is a great recovery tool, and while its FAF isn't the best, I think it's got some pretty solid utility for mix-ups. Rocket Lance down SIG has 16 frames of startup, active frames from 17 to 21 and 37 to 46 with an FAF of 69. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. It functions very comparably to her down SIG on Battle Boots, though with a slightly faster startup and slightly slower FAF. The main difference between it and the Battle Boots down SIG is that during her backdash animation, there is an additional hitbox provided by the tip of the Rocket Lance, so I think that it'll have slightly better coverage with comparable utility. So overall, her SIGs are slightly below average in terms of their frame data, which makes sense given her impressive speed. The FAF on her Battle Boots side SIG is terrifying, frankly, and reminds me a lot of Sonic in Super Smash Bros. Her Rocket Lance side SIG has some pretty low FAF too. The FAF on some of these moves is pretty high, but given the lengthy animations that she goes through during each of them, I think it's understandable. I think that giving her some lengthier animations to compensate for her high speed is a good balanced choice as well, and I think that it will make dealing with her a little bit easier. Those neutral SIGs are going to be pretty crazy, I think, though. With a low startup at 15 and 17 frames respectively, good utility, coverage, mobility, and as a recovery option, I think that they'll be really good on her kit. She has good coverage on both of her weapons, and I'm interested to see where they go in the future. Her design's really cool, and what I'd imagine Hermes would look like if he was sponsored by Nike. The animation and mobility quality of the SIGs also just keeps getting better and better, and I can't wait to see how much better they get. I think that Battle Boots will take a little bit more time to develop in the meta, but they've already made a top 8 appearance at Summer Championships, but we'll have to wait and see. Sorry for the delay on this one. I took up boxing for the past 6 months and haven't had as much free time lately, but the Red Raptor video will be coming out really soon. Then I'll have some other ones that I'm working on after that. Once again, I'm Cobalt, and thanks for watching.